And then it's like, hold on. The fact is that as a human being, you will never be perfect at something the first time. And if so, that's a lucky thing. And that's great. Continue improving it. But we have this type of view that we're supposed to act in this way. And it's almost like we don't understand just how we function as human beings.
Oh.
The nature tells us everything about how we're supposed to be. Everything is a process. Starts from a seed, it grows into a little plant, and it starts to gather more nutrients from the ground. It gets water, it gets sunlight, it's taking things in continuously, and it's growing. That is how we operate. So people think you're supposed to go from A to B in 2 seconds, and when that expectation isn't met, what's left? Disappointment.
Hey guys, and welcome to this week's podcast episode. And we're going to talk with Dr. Davis. Dr. Marcia Gayle Davis is a lifestyle and preventive medicine doctor. She focuses a lot on mental health and how we need to work on having a clear mind, but also on how depression is a hard thing at the moment in the whole world, and plant-based lifestyle. How can plant-based lifestyle help you become healthier and just a happier person? And so my heartbeat plays to your song, and it never gets old. It never gets old. Feel my heartache. Hey Marcia.
Hello. Hi Casper. How are you?
I'm good. How about you? Nice to meet you. Am I pronouncing your name right, Marcia?
Yes, Marcia Gayle. It's actually two names.
Okay, so what does your friends call you?
Marcia Gayle.
Okay, I'll try to say both, Marcia Gayle.
Yeah.
Where are you from in America?
So I'm living in San Diego right now, but I'm actually originally from Jamaica.
Okay.
And I've grown up in the States as well, so it's kind of two worlds I've experienced. But yeah, I'm currently here in San Diego, enjoying this.
Awesome. Yeah, one of my best friends from Canada is actually from Jamaica as well.
Oh, that's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's a really good guy.
Yeah.
We play sports together.
Okay. Were you guys playing football? Or
I played professional handball. I don't know if you know that sport. It's European handball.
I don't know too much about it, but yeah, please tell me. I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, it's Olympic sport, and it's the second biggest sport in Europe, and it's not very big in North America, and it's basically just like soccer with your hands indoor on a basketball court, a big thing.
Oh, okay. I have heard of that. Yes.
Yeah, and then you have two defense, and the defense is kind of allowed to do some good hits on you, and you need to get through the defense and score a goal with your hands on a goal. So it's a fun sport, and that's also what made me find the plant-based lifestyle, because I was looking to I don't know how to say it, to get better of running and all that stuff. And then I started eating plant-based, and it helped me so much. And then I'd start taking these nutrition courses on it, and I was blown away. And then right now, I have a plant-based restaurant in Copenhagen, Denmark, where we just show how whole food plant-based should be served, and how it should be, how it can taste if you do it correct, just to get people on the green wagon, right?
Get people on the green wagon.
I think it's important.
Absolutely.
So, how about you? How has your plant-based journey been?
I just, before that, I wanted to make a comment that there is a sport in Jamaica that we play called netball, which is a little bit similar, I think.
Okay.
It has a pole.
Yeah.
And at the top of the pole, there's a ring for you to put the ball in.
Okay.
But it's throwing it. You're not bouncing. You're just throwing, and then you toss the ball into the ring. It's a game that the women play. It's more women, I guess, like softball. That's becoming, most of these sports are becoming kind of both genders. But I just wanted to make that comment that I actually think we have something similar to that.
Yeah.
But anyways, No, I think things really started for me quite early. I feel like I've been just drawn to health because of just how much this affects everything in your life. Your health is the foundation of you being able to experience life. So it's not a kind of an option. It's like a requirement. It's so necessary. So my mom, when we were like in middle school, started changing some things about our diet. And you know, we come from Jamaica, so our food, our culture is very based in cooking things, you know, from scratch, or just cooking number one, and then using whole foods, eating lots of fruits, because Jamaica is a tropical island, so there's fruits galore. And we already were continuing with our own cultural cuisine, but the influence of the US environment, you know, had some play. So there were some processed foods here and there, soda, things like that. So she just wanted to start cutting those things out because she's reading, listening to the news, like, okay, this isn't healthy. So she started changing things from taking out white bread, for example, and replacing that with whole wheat bread, removing the soda, removing junk food, things like that. And so from that point, it just kind of sparked something in me to continue learning more. And I just became very motivated to prepare my own lunches and have an apple instead of Cheez-It.
Oh, nice.
You know, things like that. And I got into an exercise regimen on my own, just knowing how I felt exercising and how much it made me feel good. I just started developing my own little regimen that I carried into college. And I used to play sports as well in college, in the high school. So I played soccer, basketball, and I ran track. And so when those things were over, then I kind of had to figure out something else to do to keep active. And that was where I started like getting into my own exercise. Yeah, so that's been like the beginning of the journey. And then from then on, the passion has burned bright. And I see the incredible impact of chronic disease so viscerally, because I'm a physician. So I see this in the lives of patients, and I can see just how much burden this is. And on the other side of that, when we're able to link into these natural behaviors, really, it's more of a product of our environment that has influenced so much of our behavior towards maladaptive ways of living, away from what we naturally are instinctually trying to do. It results in disease, and people just suffer from it needlessly. So many of these diseases, as we know, are preventable, up to 80%, especially with heart disease and diabetes. So to know that these diseases need not be an issue for most people, it's shocking to me that we have the rates of disease that we do, especially in the US. So.
Do you have lots of connection with Jamaica still?
Yeah, I still have family down there. Yeah, I still have family down there.
Can you see like a difference on the people there who, I don't know, who's more into like the US kind of eating, and then maybe the older generation who are more into like the natural food?
So that is something that you definitely see culturally. Jamaicans we have a lot of herbal remedies that are part of just how we would deal with ailments and illnesses. There's something called Circe tea, which is a very bitter herb. And when you drink that, it's like, can you even drink it is the question. It's so bitter. But that's something that people would drink all the time. If you have a bellyache, drink some Circe tea. If you have some other problem, drink some Circe tea. Yeah. So that there's this kind of foundation of, we like to deal with things without medications. And when you get into the older generation, especially when you're caring for patients who are Jamaican, and that's the same thing. Okay, I don't want to have to take a medication. What else can I do from a natural standpoint? Yeah. So I think older generation still has that mentality, but I think that's culturally Jamaicans really exist in that way. However, even with that, the influence that Western diet has influenced everywhere in the world. So even in Jamaica, we have our Burger King, we have KFC, all these different fast food establishments that have popped up, and in the culture, in the health status, you can see that effect even happening there. We just see how that kind of westernized diet is spreading globally, you know. So I think the rates of different diseases, chronic diseases especially, have increased over the years. but you still have individuals who are, you know, living in an environment where less of this type of influence is there, and you see them living well into their 80s, 90s, 100.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that you hear about all the time. Oh yeah, Miss blah blah blah. She died at 102. Like, it's not surprising. You know, that happens. A lot of centenarians that they have done specials on and interviews, you know, that are accessible, you know, on the internet. They're centenarians, and they're like, this person is in Jamaica. And it's like, that's not surprising to me.
Well, that's cool, because I think like where I live in Denmark, like we have never people over 100 or not even close. I think if somebody is 80, people are surprised, like, oh, this guy's 80 years old. And that's just that's a crazy mindset, I think, and maybe also like a sad mindset to have. Yeah, and I think that must be the same in the States, that people are just not, they kind of don't know that people can live until they're 100. Like, it's not even possible in people's mindset at the moment.
I think that because of the way that we're currently living with the health status that we have, it's become more of a normal thing for people not to live that or live well into their older years. There are definitely individuals who are centenarians in the US. I mean, I've taken care of patients who are centenarians, and I'm looking at them like, wow. And of course, when you look at their lifestyle, it comes back to these same principles that we talk about all the time, you know, eating a diet that's based in plants, because plants are what have the nutrients that allow your body to function properly. That's literally the equation. It's not like, gosh, I wish you could, like, it's not like a choice. It's like plants are the only things that provide that. So you have to get it from there. And moving and sleeping well and decreasing stress levels so that you can just be in a very healthy mind, state of mind, connecting with people and just avoiding things that actually damage your body. So these are all the principles come back to these very basic things. But because of the way that our culture operates, everybody knows somebody who has heart disease. Everybody knows someone who has diabetes. Everybody knows someone who has cancer.
It's in all families.
Yeah, and even in families, like you're kind of alluding to this generational disease effect.
Yeah.
My grandmother, and then my mother, and then my aunts, and then a whole collection of a family has all of these different diseases.
Yeah. What, like, I actually want, because I have a question stuck in my mind, so we're going to jump back a bit, but because you were talking about that you were on a healthy path from when you was young, and then you played sports, but most of my friends who I grew up with who play sports and were on a healthy journey themselves, like they shifted more towards like paleo and ketosis diets and stuff like that. Like, how come did you shift more to like the plant-based diet? Because that's still, even though that a person is on a healthy journey, like the plant-based road right now is still quite unique, I would say.
You know, I think because I think part of it is just my rearing and what I like. So I really enjoy eating plant food. You know, I've lost so much of the taste for meat, dairy. I just don't have the taste for that. And it's not like I'm fighting, like, oh man, I really feel for that piece of chicken. It's like, okay, but I got some chickpeas here. I'm so excited. Like, it's like that kind of energy. I just love to eat it. It tastes so good, how my body feels when I eat it. It's like, I don't want to compromise that experience. So I think that was one piece of it. Like, I just enjoy being healthy. And for me, what I've seen about what I eat and how it impacts my body, it just kind of cycles up. Instead of a downward spiral, it's like an upward spiral. It just continues to reinforce the choices that I make. And then my background. So, you know, I come from a Christian background. Adventist. I was raised Adventist. I'm Adventist, and there's a doctrine on health that is very much a part of the culture, and something that everybody understands. So, essentially, what it talks about is all of these lifestyle principles, and one of those is that you know, the plant foods are your focus. So I kind of already had that propensity just from the influences that I had around me. But it's like, no, I tested for myself and it passed the test.
Yeah.
So now this is something that I'll continue to do because of the impact that it has in such a positive way on me.
Yeah. What kind of principle is that they teach you with that Christianity?
At least I would say it's the health doctrine specifically in the like Adventist message is really based around these lifestyle principles, those 6 ones that I mentioned to you. There's actually a project called Blue Zone Project, which I feel like you're already familiar with.
Yeah.
And if not, yeah, right. So it's all of that. The blue zones, the fact that the only blue zone in the US is an Adventist community in Loma Linda. It's the only one. You have blue zones all over the world, but the only one in the US is an Adventist community where people live well into their older age, having a very high quality of life, you know, as 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, 100-year-olds, centenarian. So you see that this is a culture that's been built where this way of life is no longer a chore. It's not hard. Everyone does it. So that's the normal. And we're kind of fighting against that in our larger society because what's been set as the normal is really poor eating habits, sedentary behavior, unhealthy stress management, the ways that we kind of promote dealing with stress. You know, there's a movie, someone goes through a breakup and they're eating a pint of ice cream. Like that's communicating that this is a way that we are sharing is acceptable to deal with stress.
Yeah.
Versus, okay, I'm gonna go do some exercise and get this anxiety out of me, which is one of the best ways to deal with anxiety is getting physical activity versus, you know, turning inward and becoming, isolating yourself from people, things like that, that actually lead you on a road to depression. And then if you're in that space, because depression is a real thing, it can be very hard to navigate that. You know, it's just so many different things. But
yeah, that's awesome. That's really interesting because I think like with the Adventists, like it's actually first with the vegan movement I've heard about it, and it's not like before that, like it was not long ago, because I've been vegan for 7 years, and I think it's like a year ago I met the first one. Like here, it's like really, it's like there's not many of these people in Denmark. So yeah, so where we feel in Denmark that we say we're Christian, we're a Christian country. Like we have like baptism and all that stuff, all the parties. We like all the parties, but the Danish people are also so far behind with like eating enough greens and healthy and plant-based. So I think it's quite exciting to hear that there's also a part of Christianity that promotes plant-based food, because that's actually also a good way to talk to like Danish people that it's actually a part of the Christianity in some parts that they promote like healthy lifestyle and more plant-based.
I'll tell you why it's considered such a pillar or an important part of like the doctrine, even though at the end of the day, for me, it's really about relationship with God. So I'm using the term doctrine to kind of just describe how the health message is a part of it. But at the end of the day, it's really a spiritual connection with the Creator. And that's what allows you to kind of live life in a very full way, because that's how you understand like how you exist, why you're here, what you're supposed to do, all of that. So, you know, going back to why it's so important is that you cannot exist well if your health is compromised. And so it's such an important part of your spiritual experience and your physical experience. And the way that I think about us as human beings, we have like these 4 elements: physical, mental, spiritual, social. As humans, we are extremely social. We are a social organism. We cannot exist without each other. That is why we operate in the way that we do. That is why we're influenced by what other people do. Yes, you can have a very strong mindset, and you know, this person is like, is seen as icon, whatever, and they kind of exist in this way where their individuality is praised, it's admired. But they've had influences around them. They've had influences in their early life. They've had influences in their environment. And that goes to show you just that social piece is so important. And that we have a need to belong somewhere. And either you have kind of a good exposure to what that is, or you have a good environment that promotes that sense of well-being and belonging, or you might have an environment that doesn't do that. But it's a need that has to be filled. So that's the social part. Mental part. Oh my gosh. Anxiety and depression. Depression is the number one cause of this disability globally. Yeah. People don't even think about that. Yeah. And the thing about depression is that because your mind really determines everything else about you, is that it affects your health later on, because your ability to engage in healthful ways, with your body, with your life, your whole life experience is changed by that. And it's so easy for us as not only a medical community, but society-wise, we downplay mental health, which makes no sense to me, because the body is mind-body connection all the way. So you cannot push one up here, praise it, and then decrease this other one. Yeah. So that's the mental part, which we actually need to start thinking of mental health as a practice, where we practice it as habits. And then the spiritual part of it is that you have to have some sense of purpose in your life. If you feel like you're not really sure what you're doing, you're going to feel like you're wandering aimlessly and you don't have a direction. When you have direction, when you feel like you're doing something that matters, it fuels what you do things well, you impact other people in a positive way. And then the last part is just physical, which is our visceral experience in this world, and how our bodies feel, all of that.
Yeah. So why do you feel, because I feel like depression is getting quite big, and lots of people are suffering with it. Like, why is this happening at the moment?
I think that a lot of it is people, we're on a journey. Everybody's on a journey, and you're kind of figuring out where you stand in this world. So part of that is that we don't practice mental health. We actually don't practice it. People kind of view health as something that you just have or you inherit, and something that just kind of is. But there is work involved. The same way that you have to maintain your physical health is the very same way you have to maintain your mental health. Why is that? Because we incur a lot of emotional insults on a regular basis. You're trying to do something, you fail at it, you're gonna have a feeling like, gosh, I failed at this thing, or someone says something to you that's rude. A relationship ended. There's just so many different ways that we incur a lot of emotional insults. And there are ways that you heal those on a regular basis. And there's a great analogy. I would actually recommend that you check it out. There's a PhD psychologist by the name of Dr. Guy Winch, and he has a TED Talk. It's called Emotional First Aid. He has a book called Emotional First Aid. And in that TED Talk, he basically talks about this type of favoritism, where we favor the body, physical, that whole category. We upplay that. It's super important, but we downplay kind of the partner in that experience, which is you have your body, your experience being a mind-body type of thing, and play down the mental aspect of it. And so you don't practice the things that you need to practice. You don't practice saying to yourself, okay, I had this issue here that occurred.
Yeah.
I failed here. And you know what? I learned something about that situation. What did I learn here? I learned this, this, and that. Okay, so when I move on to the next thing, I'm going to apply these things that I learned. Instead, what most people do is they will take that experience and they'll internalize it. So they'll say, the fact that I failed was because something I did was wrong. Something is wrong with me, why I couldn't, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, hold on. The fact is that as a human being, you will never be perfect at something the first time. And if so, that's a lucky thing. And that's great. Continue improving it. But we have this type of view that we're supposed to act in this way. And it's almost like we don't understand just how we function as human beings. The nature tells us everything about how we're supposed to be. Everything is a process. Starts from a seed, it grows into a little plant, and it starts to gather more nutrients from the ground. It gets water, it gets sunlight. It's taking things in continuously, and it's growing. That is how we operate. So people think you're supposed to go from A to B in 2 seconds. And when that expectation isn't met, what's left? Disappointment. And if you're not dealing with that and understanding what's actually happening, you will incur just levels and levels of disappointment that start to take a mental toll on you. So I think the idea of just having mental habits is really important. And I don't think we look at mental health in that way, where it's actually a level, it's a set of habits that you practice on a regular basis. Being positive, that's a habit. Having gratitude, the fact that, wow, I can wake up today and I can breathe, I can see the sunshine, that's a habit. Or even moving forward from things and letting stuff go. Like, oh, that happened, didn't go so well. Moving on to the next thing and leaving it behind instead of carrying it with us everywhere we go. These are all habits that we don't necessarily practice all the time. And because we don't, we incur the emotional insults and it becomes a wound that eventually gets really big and cannot be just dealt with on our own after that.
Yeah. I feel some of that can come from social media because you often watch people with so much success, and even though maybe they don't have success, but they look like they have success, right? So everybody kind of feels like they need to be better, quicker, and they can't see the timeline from where people are at. So that could be one thing. And also, I had a really great talk with a guy on meditation, and I'm not good at it at all. Like I'm not, but I think like this comes like what that meditation is for some people can be quite scary because it's so maybe like hippie or I don't know, like the spiritual guy, but it is actually just sitting down and being present and thinking positive thoughts for yourselves in the morning to start your day off good. So I don't know, did you do stuff like that?
I do, and
nice.
And I found it to be so important. I teach this to my students. I taught this to my grandmother to do deep breathing, soft belly breathing. There's this wonderful little 7-minute soft belly breathing exercise that's taught by Dr. James Gordon. He leads like the Center of Mind Body Medicine, and the way that he does it, his voice is so calming. So it's like such a great thing to listen to. But if you can practice that and take that exercise with you, so any situation that comes up, you're feeling anxious or feeling stressed, you're upset, take a moment and just say, okay, hold on, I'm feeling all of this, let me just take a moment and just go into that process. What you're actually doing is taking control of your response, because we cannot control what happens outside of us. We just cannot. Unless you put yourself in an environment or create a system around yourself. Yes, you can do that too. But I'm talking about just like life. We can't control life always. Things happen. So it's really important to step into a place where you can manage your responses. And you can do that by turning off your own parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that allows you to rest and relax and be calm. That's your parasympathetic nervous system. What causes anxiety is our sympathetic nervous system, which we are all very familiar with, right? So meditation, I think, allows you to turn on that relaxation voluntarily, and you practice getting really good at turning it on when you do meditation and deep breathing. And you can even meditate through exercise. That's one. It's called like it's like movement meditation. It's a different. There are like 3 different types of meditation, but this one is the active one, dancing in this type of flow. And lots of ways that you can meditate, but as long as it gets you into a place where you can be present and relax, that's where you want to be.
Okay, that's good. Like, do you have other tips for mental health before we go on?
I think really those key things that I kind of mentioned a while ago. It's being positive.
But what if you're like, because I think that's also the hard about depression is you kind of get yourself in the spiral of negative thoughts, right?
Okay. I see what you're saying. Well, when I say be positive, it's not just like yay, like it's not that kind of, like more like looking at the evidence. What is actually a good thing that you see about the situation? You may feel that what you're seeing is not good, but look at the facts. And you have facts to say, I am, and it kind of goes into gratitude. I have life. That is a good thing. I have a life. I have a place to sleep. I have a car. I have a job. I have family. So I think being able to focus on what is there, like what are the things that actually are present that I can be grateful for. It really does change your perspective, because you're when you're depressed, your whole focus is completely twisted. That's the issue with depression, is that you're not seeing reality. That's what it does. It changes your reality from one that's actually factually based to one that's illusions. And that's the challenge. So it's, how do I get back into the real world? Back into, that's one way to anchor yourself in evidence, to say, oh my gosh, my life is the worst ever on the planet. And you have to question that and challenge that statement. Is my life really the worst? What is worse than my life? Okay, so a lot of other things could be worse. So I'm not in that position. So I am much better than that, which is something I can appreciate. Talked about moving, like trying to let things go. People anchor themselves so much into experiences and they just take it on. And like you know better, so you do better. Oprah always like talks about that, and she got that from Maya Angelou. You know better, so you do better. You can't expect yourself to be perfect, and that's one of the issues. Going back to your social media piece, because we're looking at people curating their lives and not really being completely vulnerable, and that's because they're also not trying to be vulnerable. So when you see the perfection, that's an indication that why don't not sharing the fullness of who you are. That is not comforting the fullness of yourself as well, honestly, because it's like, if you can just be and it's whatever, then you will just be and it's whatever. I think it's like, let us look back at facts.
I think that's a good, that's a good one. I do, I do the same with social media. Like I only show the nice pictures of my kids. I don't show them when they're crying, right? Like I only show the good food I eat, not the food when I'm tired of making food I eat. So like, I think like social media is a part of it. And I think it's also hard to get away from.
I should qualify that, because I should qualify that statement, because it's not like you have an issue if you're only sharing those things. I think part of it is like what people gravitate towards, and what we want to present also is like, I want to present my best work. Like when I present I want it to look good, So I understand that piece of it. But people can still be authentic, even as they show wonderful things that they do and they're wanting it to look the best. I think your spirit just communicates that authenticity when you're like, oh, I have my own struggles. My journey was a journey, and I started here, and then I'm here. Like, you're communicating the fullness of yourself in that sense. So.
Yeah, that's true. Let's jump back to like your education. Let me hear how that started and how that was to get through.
So that was medical school, then residency, and now I'm in a fellowship essentially with in preventive medicine. But I decided I wanted to be a physician when I was in college, and I had the opportunity to do an externship. I went to Swarthmore College in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, which is like a small little borough, but it's right near Philly, about 20 minutes from Philly, but well-known liberal arts college. And we have these opportunities to connect with alumni who are doing work that we're interested in. So I got connected to this really awesome OBGYN, Dr. Sherman, and she allowed me to be able to see births and procedures that she was doing, gynecologic procedures. And that was just so fascinating to me, was that I got to see my first birth, and I saw it up close, and I was just floored at how this comes out of the human body.
It's crazy.
This is a machine. This thing is not to be played with. The body is like one of the most amazing things. And that is how I feel now. Like, I'm in the best job because I just get to learn every day more and more about the body. I'm just in love with the human body. I think it's just one of the most amazing things. So that was kind of the beginning of like, I could totally do this. I could totally study this, for the rest of my life. And then in addition to that, I wanted people to be healthy. So I saw my role as a physician as a guide. And I said, I want to have the impact on my patients where I can actually help them preserve their health And that's what I feel my role is, to help you do that. So that's kind of how my decision to go into medicine came about. And I love talking with people, you know, I love connecting with people. So and building relationships over time. That's why I'm a primary care doctor and not a specialist. And I love the variety of the different things that I get to see. You know, you have to know the whole human body. So it's just, that variety is always going to be there. So decided from there on to go to medical school, and I went to UCSD, which was a great experience, just with my cohort and the administration at the time, which was Dean Kelly, Dean Willis Okowo, Dean Mandel. They were very supportive of students. I felt like we could talk to them. You know, we could share whatever, we could share our thoughts about things. They were very supportive of students on all spectrums. You know, those who did well, those who are struggling, they were there to support. And then from there, I matched into Yale Primary Care, which is one of the oldest primary care residencies for internists, which I think is awesome. So I was very blessed to have that opportunity. And then throughout that whole process, my thought and my passion was, at the end of the day, what are we doing with getting prevention to be the priority of our healthcare? Because people don't come to the doctor to stay sick. They come to the doctor to get better. And when you look at the word healthcare, it includes care and it includes health. So we're supposed to be caring for your health. And it makes sense to me that our current healthcare system, which I know that I'm talking specifically about the US system, but it is not that way. It is not there to care for health or to preserve health. It's really more of a reactive system. And that's the very problem, that even in this pandemic, we can see how we've been so reactive. We're just like 10 steps behind, constantly 10 steps behind. And it's the same way when we look at healthcare. We're just 10 steps behind. We're 10 steps behind our patients who are, you know, dealing with chronic diseases that it shouldn't have really had in the first place. If we had put in place those strategies, that infrastructure to help them maintain their health from the beginning, the suffering and struggling to kind of, you know, swim out of this environment that engulfs them in behaviors that don't allow them to preserve their health.
Yeah. And when, like with all this preventive medicine, how like, what does that mean? If you need to explain that, like really simple.
Okay, I mean, as simply as it can be explained is that it's really a field of medicine that is really is focused on disease prevention and health promotion. Yeah, that's it.
But do all doctors learn that?
So it's a specialty.
Okay.
I know, right? It's kind of, because even in experience with colleagues, they're like, preventive medicine? I'm and it's like, that's the very problem. Prevention should be at the root of everything we're doing. And we look at different specialties and we see people having to deal with chronic diseases everywhere, you know, from surgery to immunology to OBGYN, you know, OB-GYN to cardiology. I mean, everything comes back to like this current issue that we're having, this pandemic, this severe pandemic. Even before we had COVID pandemic, we were having a pandemic, an epidemic in the US, but to just levels that were so concerning. And that's something that I kind of have been just thinking a lot about, that the way that we've approached the pandemic, it's been so much emotion, so much concern about the COVID pandemic, which is valid. Yes. Concern. We just had over 400,000 deaths from COVID. I mean, that's very concerning.
Yeah.
At the same time, we have not exercised that level of concern for the amount of people that die from heart disease every year.
No, not even.
Concern for people who have strokes every year, or they're disabled to the point that they are not able to live the kind of life that they probably saw themselves living.
Yeah.
And the diabetes affects. It's just amazing how we kind of choose what diseases are important to be concerned about, and the others that we're like, I mean, this is kind of how we do things now, and we just normalized it so much.
But do you think there's a reason why they kind of look through all these kind of diabetes diseases and not take it as seriously as they're doing with this virus?
I think that when you look at the virus, that's something it's new. Like this is a novel virus, meaning that we've never seen it before. The first time that we're exposed to it. On the other hand, we've had more than 2 decades to get comfortable with obesity and get comfortable with diabetes and get comfortable with heart disease. It's been a gradual progression. Even from 1990s, we already kind of sound the alarm that we were shifting in the types of, in our epidemiology. Back in the 90s, it was like infections that killed everybody. No, it's diseases. So I think it's because our culture has changed over time. And because it's gradually changing, it's something that doesn't allow you to kind of see the stark difference. And so with that, kind of like marinating, it's kind of like marinating. When chicken marinates over time, it just starts to collect that flavor.
Yeah.
Maybe you will use broccoli. So
yeah. Thank you. I was feeling sick.
Collect that flavor. And so we've been marinating in this very unhealthy culture for so long that people are just like, but that's what we do, Have you heard that little riddle about the frog? It's used for kind of, I think, systems assessment or business, but it's the idea that you can't boil a frog. Or how do you boil a frog? You have to put the frog in room temperature water and slowly increase the temperature over time. So by the time it's boiling, the frog has acclimated to each of those changes. It doesn't even realize that it's boiling at the time that it is. It doesn't realize that it's in crisis at the time that it is. If you were to throw it in the boiling water, it would jump out. But because you've given it time to slowly, acclimate, it's like, oh, this is normal to me, and that's where we are right now.
No, but if you go out and talk with the public about the heart disease and diabetes, this is just like normal talks. It's like, yeah, my grandmother has it, and I'll probably get it too, and I have pre-stages of this, so they're just getting ready to get sick, and that's what I think is the most dangerous part of all this, that people are getting ready to be sick at old, where you could actually have a life when you're old than being sick. Right. And how do we prevent that?
And you're speaking to the fact that sickness is now like a birthright. That's what we, or what we're inheriting at this point. It's really the reality. And it comes back to just us as human beings and just how much we're influenced by our environments. Because, people like to, when we talk about obesity, when we talk about chronic disease, when we talk about preventable lifestyle related diseases, it's very easy to kind of take that individual responsibility argument, which people do a lot. And they're just like, come on, you got to do better. You got to take responsibility for your life in that way. Granted, yes, we all have choices that we make. However, our behaviors, which are influenced by our choices, are the mechanisms for how disease develops. However, there are a lot of different factors that come in, to that mechanism. That mechanism is influenced by certain things. It's like an input into the system. So the system is your behavior, but what input is going into that? Okay, so I grew up in an environment where food deserts are the normal for me. Economically, my community is not supported as it should be. Resources are not invested in my community as it should be. Okay, so when you compare somebody's experience in that situation, it's not hard to see what has become their normal, what's their culture from a health standpoint, how they behave. It's influenced by so many things. The fact that I have a lot of, there's violence, there's poverty in my community as a result of resources being divested away from it. I'm going to exist in a very high stress environment. Okay, so I'm trying to manage stress at very abnormally high levels that I have to deal with on a daily basis. All of those things input people's choices. And I think it's always, this conversation has got to be rooted in context, which is that individual choices are influenced by environmental environmental influence. And that's how we need to look at it versus how people tend to look at it, which is the individual choices, and that people who are obese are just lazy and all of these different things. That it's like, no, you're actually not speaking to facts, because that's not what contributes.
Yeah. Yeah. So like what diseases do you see the most at the moment?
Your garden variety of hypertension and diabetes, heart disease.
Okay. Can we talk about diabetes? Like what like if you get like a patient in who has it, like what does the preventive medicine do about that? Like how would you help that person?
I think number one, I would need to understand who the individual is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very important. You know, I can't come in having all these recommendations and you need to do this, you need to do that. I don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Who are where are you from? What's your background? All
Yeah.
of that is important because I'm building a relationship with my patient. They have to trust me. I
Mm.
trust them. That's how we operate. And I am not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm here to provide you with information and support, and I'm here to be a guide for you
Mm.
because you at the end make the choices for what's best in your life, and that's really how I see it. So I would need to build, you know, understand who this person is, and then as their physician, knowing that I have impact in how they view their health,
Yeah.
I'm going to emphasize as strongly as I can the importance of the lifestyle. That's really where we're building things off. So
Yeah.
it's not going to be preaching about it, but it's saying what I understand is that when we're able to engage in these types of behaviors, this is the kind of endpoint that we see. This is an experience that we have data about communities that live in this way, and this is the kind of endpoint that we see. We have data on when you're even already in a state of disease that you
Mm.
can improve that or even reverse it, because diabetes reversal is something that is documented. I hope it's no longer a controversial term because this is
Well, that's okay. I like controversial. It's okay.
you know, who knows? People sometimes when they hear diabetes reversal, it's like what? And it's like,
Yeah.
but we have that documented from bariatric surgery, and we have that documented from lifestyle changes. So
Yeah.
it's funny because the ADA at a point was describing diabetes as kind of a chronic, irreversible disease,
Mm.
and that's not factual. And I believe they have evolved to describing that as a diabetes as it is, which is it's a state. It's a state that your body's in. A lot of things are contributing to that inflammation, lack of nutrients that lead to inflammation, that lead to the production of free radicals, and all these things damage your cells and lead to dysfunction of the physiologic mechanisms that are
Yeah.
underpinnings of how your body works. So anyways, I'm getting off on that topic, but at the end of the day, it's really talking to someone, connecting with them. So when I know you and I kind of give you the general understanding of how we approach health, how I approach health
Mm.
as your doctor, then I say, what's important to you? And what can I link about your motivations into what I've discussed with you? So
Yeah.
then we can say, what's special, what's personal for you about this experience? Okay, so you had a grandmother who died of diabetes, so diabetes is really concerning for you, you're really fearful of getting it, you currently have pre-diabetes. Okay, so how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
And then have a conversation and kind of go from there.
Yeah. 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 But then of course, they feel bad. And like, I want to dive, like, I would like to hear more about like, I don't know, the I don't know how to say that, but the stuff like the plant-based. Is it like, do you talk about the plant-based food with clients and how do they receive it?
I think so. That's kind of what I'm alluding to. That you have to understand who the person is.
Yeah.
And you actually ask for permission to share things.
Okay.
So, would you like to hear more about the type of way of eating that's actually associated with improved health? Or that's like very kind of jargon. So you could say, would you like to hear more about what can keep your body healthy?
Yeah.
And people say, sure. And so then you kind of share information that when we think about how our body works, your body is a machine essentially, and it has different parts that it needs to function properly. And using analogies, I find, is very helpful because sometimes medical information, the fact that we go to 4 years to study to become physicians, like that's not something the average person is going to grasp.
No.
I don't. in one sitting because they're not trained. Not that they couldn't, but they're just not trained for 4 years to kind of be in that, understand that language. So I think just understanding how to use ways that people can absorb information a lot easier is very important. So we use the analogy of a machine, and you have nuts and bolts, you have pieces, you have parts, you have screws. Okay, so your vitamins and minerals are parts of this machine, and they're crucial. They're like actual parts of the machine. So if you're missing you're driving a car, you're missing the axle, you're missing a wheel. I don't think you would want to drive that car. I know I wouldn't want to drive that kind of car. And so when you're missing all of these different nutrients that your body actually requires for you to function, think of that analogy that your car is missing parts of the engine, it's missing parts of the wheel, and you can just imagine what that looks like. Your body will be in a similar position when we're not getting those proper nutrients. And using kind of analogies are typically effective in getting people to kind of understand just how important. And honestly, a lot of times it's not that people don't understand. Like everyone's pretty aware that eating fruits and veggies are important.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think the extent to the kind of impact that it has on your life is not something that people are fully aware of. And so it's less of an issue of education a lot of the times, or information, and more of an issue of awareness of the level of impact that it has. And you've experienced that, the fact that you wanted to improve your performance as an athlete.
Yeah.
The kind of impact it's had on your life, and you're just like, you're like, wow, this is amazing, and it drives your behavior moving forward. I think it's that same kind of concept.
Yeah, but I had like one of the things, like I had like chronic asthma when like since birth, and that just went away so fast. Like after just like a couple of weeks, I was taking less medicine, and then after a year, like even less medicine, and like now, like I don't use medicine. Like I think I maybe get, I get maybe like once or twice a year where I feel like I need to concentrate to focus on breathing like correct, where like I'm not at the point where I'm like, okay, I need medicine right now to like survive. And I think that's crazy, because like that's what you feel when people say it's something is chronic. You feel that's not your fault and you need to live with it.
Right.
That was what I thought. So it like with, like I saw the Forks Over Knives movie. I don't know, did you see that movie? Yeah, and they were just talking about like cancer and heart disease and all that stuff. And I felt like so many people have asthma, but maybe if something can treat cancer in some way and diabetes, like it probably would have like a good impact on asthma. And that's kind of like how I started, like drawing the conclusions for myself. So yeah, I think like that's also a part of like my fight, is to also like show people that chronic stuff is not based on you, but it's based on your habits. And that's why I think like this talk is really important, because yeah, I don't know, like so many grandparents died too early and not seeing their grandkids, and like all such like stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know actually where to go on from here, because it is like, it's a personal story. But yeah, so like I think like what happens, like is it the food, like do you believe it's mostly the food that people eat that creates all this?
I do. I think that's the foundation, because food is you. Food becomes food actually is what causes us to grow and causes our body to repair itself and maintain itself. It's the fuel for the body, and not only the fuel, but actually parts of our cellular machinery. So food cannot take a back seat. It's actually kind of the main focus. And then there are other parts of maintaining your health that are so crucial, because yes, you being able to eat foods that are nourishing to your body, you being able to engage in physical activity, which I see as more of kind of a maintenance. It's kind of like, it's like oiling making sure you're keeping the oil in the car. It's like if you don't do overall, the car is going to start having problems. Versus I need gas. That's like I need food. I need gas all the time. I need food all the time. But oil, that you know, you need that every you need that at a lesser extent. And so the physical activity functions in that way, because you can't, for one, with weight loss, it's the focus on physical activity has been really profound. And it's so interesting to hear patients say, yeah, I just gotta like exercise more. And I'm like, you know, it's just so interesting to see the power of marketing. And even with like the fitness industry, there's the idea of like exercise being the main way. But when you look calorie for calorie, it's just not possible. Math-wise, you cannot lose more weight by focusing on exercise. It has to be the calories that you're taking in and how that is allowing you to reach an even energy balance versus a positive energy balance, which is what causes you to gain weight. Stress management, of course, that's so crucial because that ties into your mental health. And if your mental health is compromised, your physical health is going to be compromised. And then, you know, of course, sleep is really crucial as well. That's just a part of us being able to repair ourselves. So we have to have this reset button happen every night. Yeah. And you're missing out on that. We know the data shows that very clearly that sleep deprivation actually starts to develop, causes you to develop metabolic syndrome, which contributes to heart disease and diabetes. So metabolic syndrome is at the underpinnings of most chronic diseases anyway, but it shifts into that. And so it's like so many of these components are important, but food is really, really crucial.
Yeah. So when you have that client who's like, you get to know them and they're like, just, yes, I need to try the plant-based food and diet. And like, what's your tips and advice to start on that?
So I think, again, understanding how human beings are, that we don't jump into things just like that, unless something forced us into it. You know, you can, a aversion for something can be created instantly. And then somebody's behavior changes 180 degrees. But for the most part, we gradually change. So kind of understanding that, I mean, even with kind of a car, you know, you got to warm up the car in the winter. You can't just turn it on and bam, you know, into the snow-covered streets. So knowing where people are, after you have a conversation, you kind of see where they are. And we'll say, okay, why don't I share this little pamphlet with you? I want you to take a look at it, to read it. And then when you come back for your next appointment, we'll have a conversation about it. Okay. We'll kind of talk about that a bit. So I would share just kind of very basic information and things that would appeal to them, depending on what they shared with me, you know, what their motivations are to improve their health, which number one, if someone's saying, I want to be healthy, I mean, that's like gold right there, because they have an interest. They could easily be like, no, I don't care. I'm not. That could be one response. But if someone says, I really want to get healthy, I just don't know how. Wow. I am so excited to help you, guide you on this journey, because you're already motivated. That's 50% of the challenge. So yes, I think one tool is just being able to share small amounts of information that you can have patients work on, and then come back to you. And then that's a gradual process that you're implementing for them. They need time to kind of sit, you know, and documentaries are also great for that, because people are just able to kind of, you know, get this knowledge, and then you can follow up with, what did you think about it? What were your thoughts on the documentary? So I recommend documentaries all the time to my patients, all the time.
Yeah. And then like so what type of food would you like talk to them to eat? If
the basics, I mean, all our plant foods, I recommend a plant-based diet, and just the importance of that diet, not as something special. A plant-based diet is the human diet. Like it's really what what allows us to function the best. Why? Because again, going back to just human physiology, vitamins are crucial for certain enzymatic reactions that happen in the cells. Like you're not going to get from eating a diet that's largely processed and very deficient in a lot of nutrients. And if you're eating excess meat, you're not getting enough of those plant foods. If your portions, like what you're eating, is largely meat and you have a little bit of plant foods on the side, like just the quantity is not allowing you to get enough of what you need. So it's going back to plant-based diet, the different fruit groups in the plant-based diet. You have fruits, you have veggies, you have whole grains, you have legumes, which include pulses, peas, and beans. You have nuts and seeds, you have herbs, and you have roots. You have so many, and spices as well. So it's a whole collection of all these different things that we have available to keep our body healthy. And it's like this whole storehouse of nature we have access to. And I think painting in that picture versus how it's usually painted, which is like very limited, like, gosh, a plant-based diet, what do I eat on that? Lettuce? Like,
that's what people think, right?
There are also like 50 types of lettuce, so that's not a good angle. It just doesn't work.
And like, do they then ask, like, do you get questions a lot about like how to get protein and how to get calcium and that?
Mm-hmm. And that is the power of marketing. That's just the power of marketing, which tells you how powerful it is to share images and short messages with frequency, how much that can change human mind. Now that people actually factually believe that meat is the best source of protein. It's not factual, but because of the power of marketing, it changes the human mind. It changes what people believe. It changes belief systems, values even. So that's something that is often addressed. The best sources of protein in the plant-based world are legumes and nuts. Even whole grains have protein. That's why we have gluten. That's a protein. There's protein in everything. Why? Because your cells have protein in them. So every food on the planet has protein in it. It's just a part of the structure of the plant. So that, again, is another issue with the way that we present information, because we have these categories of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, which are macronutrients, and that's important. Those are specific categories. But the way that we present them to people is like, you have your carbs, you have your proteins, and it's like, but that's not how it works. Every food has a combination of these three macronutrients to provide you with energy. So I like to think of it, I like to express it in that way, because I think that it causes people to actually believe that carbohydrates are a type of food group, and food groups have a percentage of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in that one food. That's the actual.
So if you kind of have, like, there's cells everywhere in the world, right? Like, so every cell has a protein or has protein in it. Is that how you can think about it? Like, so if you have a cell, then you have a protein. Yeah.
You have proteins, right? Yes. And it varies in the percentage depending on the purpose of that food. So veggies have more protein than fruits. And you can tell that because you could squash a peach, but a kale's pretty hard to eat as a leaf. Like, that takes a lot to eat. It kind of gets tired after a while to eat it. So you can just see the difference in protein just from kind of the nature of that food, its structure.
Yeah. I feel like all that macronutrient stuff, that just comes from the fitness industry.
It doesn't. It's nutrition.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's nutrition.
Okay.
Yeah, that's nutritional field. That's the field of nutrition. Nutrition is amazing. That's a whole separate field unto itself that has provided us so much information about how these food components work, in our bodies. But macronutrients, that's nutrition. So people are, of course, fitness, wellness, the health industry, focusing a lot on I guess, what do we call them these days? Fitness models or influencers, fitness influencers, health influencers. They're approaching their work is going to include physical activity, nutrition, these types of elements. So they are using that knowledge base, but that's very much from the nutritional field.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I feel like back, I think, like, if I just try to remember, like 10 years ago, then I didn't really hear that much about like protein, carbs, and fat, and that's how the ratio should be. But now I feel like that's what everybody's talking about. Like,
right.
And I think it's, so that was my conclusion in my head when you said that stuff, was because the fitness industry has like so much power in marketing and money, then this comes with like the protein powder and all that supplements you can buy, that you need to have this protein because you need to get your macros, and you need to have this ratio, And then suddenly,
Right.
like, suddenly people are just like thinking like, oh, I'm sitting at an office. I also need to have a nice ratio. And where like, I don't know if it's just me, but 10 years ago, I didn't hear anybody talk about like ratios in macronutrients like on a daily basis. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
just me.
no, I think that because there was a transition, like the fitness industry wasn't always here.
Oh,
There were certain pioneers that kind of brought this to the public consciousness, you know, this
yeah,
idea of fitness. I think what was his name? John Lalanne or Jack LaLanne. I think he was one of the first, you know, fitness pioneers in the fitness industry, really bringing this to kind of the forefront where this thing about fitness became a thing, like a focus. It became a movement. It became a cultural experience. Now it's in popular culture. Before, people weren't even thinking about physical activity in that way. And all of this is like kind of derivatives down the line from the Industrial Revolution, where we had such a massive change in our society. We moved from kind of this agrarian culture where
mm,
everyone had their own individual little plots of land and they ate from their own land. Now we're turning into urban centers.
yeah,
We're having more people living closely.
yeah,
We're able to cook from scratch at home. Women are in the workforce, so who's cooking at home? You know, and that's how it was at the time. Traditional gender roles being challenged, you know, in ways that women were kind of expected to provide, I guess.
yeah,
And all of those things change the way that we consume information and what's been exposed to us. So now we have the fitness part of it being like a thing because we weren't able to, I guess, get us the way that we were able to engage in physical activity was just living and working. And now
yeah,
that's changed. Our jobs are becoming more sedentary. All of this is as a result of modernization and the industrial revolution. So
yeah.
it's just really interesting. You know, our cultures have unfortunately adapted to it, but in adapting, haven't maintained kind of the foundation of how we operate as humans. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I also think like where I saw it first with like the macronutrients, and then maybe also because I can't. My background is a bit like yours. Like I've always been into health and into fitness, and like my parents, I felt like they were also into health and fitness like when I was a kid, and that's why like I played sports since I was 6, and I played the same sport, and then I actually wanted to be like a professional athlete because I saw like fitness and workout and athletes at the gym. Like that was like the healthiest people on earth. That was my mind said back in
Mm-hmm,
the days.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
then I kind of like got up in the divisions and got to like the professional teams. And that's where I found out that like some of the most unhealthy people I've ever met in my whole life is actually athletes.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
that's like, and that was a big shock for me, like finding out that like the fitness industry is not like they're promoting all these new like all this macronutrients and supplements and powders and pushing athletes, and like all the athletes are making commercials like with all these products. And then when you meet the athlete, then they're just on so much medication and seeing the doctor every month. And that was also where I felt the worst. That was as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also maybe the reason why I said that before, was because like that's maybe also 10 years ago when I started to like get in the pro leagues and then seeing this stuff. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just taking like
Yeah,
such a big stand away from like all this like fitness industry and that.
I think, and that's something, and I think that's where it's just again kind of the level of awareness where first off, I think it's like I'm an athlete, so I can get away with eating whatever. It's
Hmm.
kind of like that from that standpoint. So it's like it's less important because I can burn it off. I can deal with it in the way that I engage physically. And so especially most athletes are very young when they're in their peak or in their prime. So even that as well, you're not really seeing the culmination of those habits.
Yeah.
Um, resulting in the complications, in the disease developing and the complications that can result afterwards. So I think it's a lot of like the way that we view it is we don't always see what's happening temporally. You know, we're seeing everyone's able to engage in this way because the immediate effects aren't always presented as immediate effects, and you're not seeing that result happen as quickly, you know, as well. Because even diseases like hypertension and diabetes, a lot of the issues, the fact that we can have patients come into the hospital with blood pressures of 220 over 100 and, well, you know, 190, something crazy like that, is because people can go on about their day, not even having the symptoms of what's going on in their body until it becomes an issue. So we have things like elevated hypertension or pre-diabetes, which are states that are abnormal. This is saying something is going wrong in the body. Hey, tap, 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 signal, red flag, flashing lights, like something's not right here. But we engage with it as like, okay, that's just, I'm not too bad yet. You know, I'm just in the pre-part. And it's like, that's actually your body trying to give you a little heads up on how you how you need to listen to it and start to serve it, you know, better.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of things, but I know there's definitely the culture of like, you're young, you could do whatever you want.
I think that's the culture. But I also think something, I just I don't know, I just had like a mind boom. I don't know how to explain that, but it's also fun to see. Yeah, like I got the light bulb. But it's also fun to see that, like, in society, especially here where I live, is that like you want your youth and your kids to do sports, because from that, like from that age, they're already like, if you do sports, you're healthy, you're fit, like you're slim and all that stuff. And then as older you get, like you pressure yourself into like the better leagues, and or maybe you go to parties with your teammates and all that stuff. And then actually like this fitness thing, or the health and sports thing that your parents pushed on you because it was healthy back then, it actually turns around and makes you unhealthy. Because if you look at studies and you look at pro athletes, and that's what also I found out, is that when you look at lifespan on pro athletes, like pro athletes, they're like 62 and 73 when they die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. And that's what like, if you, and you can look up, like try to look up on all like NFL players, like, and what age they died in. Like, you're not going to find any like past 70. And it's crazy. So this thing that your parents did back then to put you in a healthy environment actually turns into not in a healthy environment. And that's why we like, and I think that's why like diet is so important, because you like, if you teach the diet before the sports or before exercise, then you kind of make this foundation for like a long healthy life. But that's not how it is right now. Now we teach sports before diets, and people like us, like we figure out when we're like 30 or 25 or 40 that like, oh, diet's actually also important. But it's like, yeah, like it's never too late, but it is kind of 25 years too late in some way.
You know, we are, in the case of us kind of growing up with that focus on sports, it's that we're prioritizing that or praising this physical activity, like for young people. And so you said like teaching it before we teach the nutrition and the diet, but it's that we just don't teach the diet at the same time.
No, we forget it, or we don't even don't bother with it.
Yeah, I think it's less of like teaching it before, more than we just lack the teaching of it at the time that we should be prioritizing it with that. So, and that goes back to marketing again, because people view athletes as having this like exceptional level of health, because we're looking more at performance, which doesn't always equate health. And I think it comes back to the knowledge, because even athletes themselves might not be fully aware of of all of the different ways that their peak performance can improve with their health and not being something that they have to sacrifice in the process.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's this thing.
Yeah. And like here for the last part of the talk, like how do you think we could like how is it possible to change this? Like if you were able to change or like do some decisions like politically or anything, like what would you do?
I have a lot of thoughts about this. We need to make prevention the priority. We need to make that popular. So our marketing needs to change towards making healthy food really fun, making it something people want to do. We need to engage in a way as a community where we support each other in that, because we've seen how so many different things have rippled out, you know, to reach kind of pop culture and to reach public consciousness. And that's what it takes. And I think that we have the tools now to do that because we have stressors happening with COVID for one, and people are like, okay, clearly we're unprepared in some way, in many ways. So we have not been focusing on the things that we should have been. Prevention is one of those important things, but just the public health infrastructure was an issue already as well. And we just kind of now are having to learn this lesson of what it means, what it looks like when we're unprepared. And part of being prepared is prevention is a piece of that, because it just kind of makes sense. So I think it's how do we utilize all of these kind of collective voices that come from all the different sectors, because that's how we're getting into society. And when every part of society says this is valuable, then it becomes valuable across. And that's where we start to get kind of this energy around, yeah, prevention matters. And I'd tell you why that makes sense to me, because as we're looking now with, you know, racial injustice and how that's become kind of the talk of the town, even though we've been dealing with this forever, especially in the US, like there's no history where that's not been the issue. Why? Because the US has been built on slavery. Like that's one of the foundations of American kind of society. And so because of the way that has operated, the issue with America is that it hasn't really come to terms with that history. And it's a bit of an analogy to somebody who's not coming to terms with their experiences. And you will never really be able to free yourself unless you kind of think about what happened and just address that. And that's where we're struggling. We're coming to that point now where we're forced to address it. But you see that everywhere now, there's ad about where we believe in Black Lives Matter. Everyone's having conversations of that. Every university or institution has a post, we're anti-racist. Like, no, that's becoming like a thing across the board. We've had it in political conversations. And this is something that we've dealt with for years. So the same way that we've not prioritized prevention for years, it's now an opportunity for us to create that same type of momentum where this becomes valuable, important to everybody, and something that we all believe in. So I think that same type of energy of how Black Lives Matter and just racial justice has become important as a society, it will be the same level. I think if we can push the needles in the right place.
Yeah, there's something happening at the moment, like I feel.
Yeah, I do feel that too. Yeah.
So I think this is what's happening in the world. There's a meaning with everything, and I think it's in the plant positive side. Yeah. And like thanks for the talk, and like it was really amazing to get to know you and make a friend. What's your near future stuff? What's going on with you in the near future? Do you have any exciting plans or something like that?
So I am, I'm just interested in creating solutions, public health solutions, and being creative to do that. That's what I am very passionate and interested in, is how do we actually start to move the needle on making prevention the priority, and what kind of tools do we have available to do that. So, you see me on my Instagram, I'm skating and I'm like, this person doesn't even look like a physician. She's like, looks like about 13 years old. And then my patients are like, you're my doctor? I'm like, yes, I am. I'm actually 30. not 20. So I think just being able to put prevention in a different light and trying to just create this type of positivity, this coolness around health that we are starting to see in different ways. But I think once we can really make that transition, like healthy is the cool thing. Yeah. Health is a new cool thing versus smoking, you know, back in the 1960s was cool. Like we can make healthy the cool thing. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, I think you're doing a great job. And I think you need to just keep on doing it. Like your life looks fun. And I think also you need to, like you said, I think it's a good way to show people that like you need to have fun your whole life, and you need to be willing to have fun your whole life.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, Casper.
Yeah, thank you. It was really nice to talk with you.
And so my heart beat plays to your song, and it never gets old. It never gets old. Feel my heart ache when you do me wrong. Now I just wanna know, I just wanna know. The chains I bear are often on my feet, and it makes me wanna cry when I see you come near. And in the dark